Teenagers across the globe are claiming credit for a low turnout at US President Donald Trump's re-election rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma yesterday. An account on social media platform TikTok encouraged others to sign up for free registration to attend the speech, but of course then not turn up. Trump's staff plan for upwards of 800,000 attendees at the event after registrations online surpassed their expectations. But it's believed just 6,000 turned up in the end. Former Republican strategist and critic of Mr Trump, Steve Schmidt, had this out on Twitter. He said, "My 16-year-old daughter and her friends in Park City, Utah, have hundreds of tickets. You have been rolled by America's teens at real Donald Trump. You have been failed by your team. You have been deserted by the faithful. No one likes to root for the losing team." Time for tonight's panel. Melbourne City Councillor Nick Rees and Sky News Outsiders co-host and Herald Sun columnist Rita Panahi. All right, let's get straight into it. Rita Panahi, the low turnout, was this part of a social media campaign?
I think it was a factor in it. It could be a factor that they announced there was something like 1 million registrations, so who the hell would want to show up and have very little chance of actually getting inside a stadium that I think has at 19,000 capacity, so it's pretty small compared to some of the crowds he's had in the past. But it's quite curious. The people who've been absolutely in fits about Russian collusion and conspiracy seem very happy for a platform that is owned by the Chinese communist regime, essentially. The TikTok is from China, to be used to interfere with this process. And I think Trump's team have just got to smarten up. There's very easy ways to counteract this. And now that they know it's going to be a tactic that's used, they can make sure that it doesn't happen again. There's some fairly simple ways of getting around it. But yeah, I'm not particularly fussed with the crowd size. I think it's a pretty minor issue in the scheme of things. It was being watched by about 5 million people on television, so I think that's far more powerful than whether there's 6,000 people there or 19,000 people there.
And look, it's not easy to get around. It wouldn't have been easy to get to Oklahoma. I watched this speech carefully, Nick Rees. I look at a lot of commentary, people like Frank Luntz, the pollster and others, who said, you know, he really was dragging out his base. He was waking them up out of this sort of last few months of COVID. I know you're not a Trump fan. I'm not asking you to change religion, but what did you make of his attempt to ignite the base?
Well, look, I think it fell flat very badly. I mean, they, booked a stadium for 20,000 people and only 6,200 turned up. And in many respects, that's emblematic of a presidency in decline. I mean, let's not forget there's 120,000 Americans who have died as a result of COVID-19. Infection rates are continuing to climb. There's about 23,000 new people infected each day. And Oklahoma is a state where infection rates are amongst the highest in the US. But against that backdrop, we had a president who just thought it was a good idea to go out and have a rally the troops
talk to me about the speech, Nick. Talk to me about the speech. Hang on. Nick, talk to me about the substance of the speech.
Okay,
what did you make of the speech?
I mean, when he joked that he was going to cut down on testing rates in the US because he was worried about the US getting bad publicity as a result of them testing and then people being found to have the virus. I mean, as I said, 120,000 people have died. This is either he meant to that and he is for real going to cut back on testing, which the man is completely insane, or he was joking about it, which at a time when there's 20 million Americans out of work,
Nicholas Rees,
it makes no sense.
You are such a tiresome...
This calls for leadership, this calls for seriousness, not in a president who's making jokes about these things.
All right, Rita, in you go.
Really, Nicholas, you would know that the worst coronavirus death rates in America are in Democrat states, and it's the Democrat governors who are handling this crisis. It's not something that the president personally does. And you look at somewhere like New York, where there's 1,600 deaths per million of population, possibly the worst rate anywhere in the world. And then you compare it to somewhere like Texas, where there's 60 deaths per million of population. So don't just lump 300 odd million Americans into one lump. Each state has its own issues. The governor of New York mandating that nursing homes had to take in COVID-19 patients has resulted in thousands of deaths. I haven't heard you mention that, but you want to lay the entire blame on Trump, who is not, as president, the one who is managing this.
I want to move on. We've got more disgrace in Victoria.